A lot happened in the period following this Princess Trust concert. Things that I prefer not to think about, much less to discuss. My wife Jill's accident, losing my mother and then my father, all events that happened within 3 years of one another. It's one of the reasons that this account stops in 2004. Another is that the concert became an opportunity to mark my work up to that point, a celebration of the artists involved in all the stages of my career. I was uncomfortable with the idea that it was all about me. I was worried that it might come across like some massive ego trip. But it ended up being among the best nights of my life. Like most things in my career up to that point, it was something that Jill came up with. Her idea was for both a produced by Trevor Horn compilation album and an accompanying concert. Deciding to do the gig in aid of the Princess Trust came next. I'd done things for them before and I always really liked Prince Charles and his work. That was the easy part. I made a wish list of the artists I wanted. The Buggles, Seal, Grace Jones, Pet Shop Boys, Lisa Stansfield, Tattoo, Dollar, ABC, Art of Noise, Propaganda, Belle and Sebastian, Yes, and Frankie Goes to Hollywood. Of those, the Frankies would of course prove most challenging. Could we get them back together? We knew that during the previous year they had participated in a VH1 show, Bands Reunited, except that Holly and Nasha had bailed out and the planned reunion never actually happened. Hoping for a different response, we contacted them. But while the other members of the band were happy to share a stage, again it was Nash and Holly who declined to take part. Fair enough. We asked the original guitarist Jed, Mark's brother, to cover for Nasha and held auditions for a new singer. The auditions made national headlines. Through them, we recruited a singer called Ryan Malloy, who was a hell of a good frontman. That was our Frankie for the evening. Phew. Similarly, Propaganda had a hiccup or two. I had asked Claudia and Suzanne if they'd perform Dr. Mabusa as Propaganda, but Ralph and Michael from the original band objected. When it became apparent that they couldn't stop the performance going ahead, they insisted on appearing, so ultimately we had to have them posing on stage behind keyboards that weren't plugged in. Add to those headaches the usual problems of having to corral a dozen or so bands to play a major concert. And, as you might imagine, it was a busy and stressful scene. There were meetings, lots of meetings. By now I'd persuaded Steve Lipson to help me put the gig together, and in my office at Psalm West we'd pore over numerous diagrams showing who was playing what and when, who was rehearsing when and where, who needed this and who needed that. All the bands were playing for free, but I had to cover their costs, which in some cases were fairly astronomical. Flying Yes over from the States, for example. On the plus side, a production company, Clear Channel, were pitching in to film the concert for a DVD release, so at least we had a budget of sorts. Meanwhile, there was a Grace situation. Of course there was. I wanted her to do Slave to the Rhythm, but Clear Channel weren't keen. Why? I suppose you could say that Grace had a certain diva-like reputation at the time. People heard the name and right away their foreheads got shiny with nerves. I'd had a similar reaction when I was working on the 2000 film Coyote Ugly and mentioned Whitney Houston. 2 or 3 people visibly flinched and put their hands in their hair. But I stuck to my guns. I wanted Slave to the Rhythm live at Wembley Arena, which meant we had to have Grace. Well, all right, they said, but you're going to have to go and talk to her, so I did. I went to meet her at her apartment by the side of the Thames, where she sat drinking red wine. I declined and drank rice milk instead. I'm doing this show at Wembley Arena, I told her. We'll have a big band on stage as well as an orchestra. I'd love you to do Slave to the Rhythm. She looked at me, lip curling. You didn't return my calls, she wailed, which was true. I hadn't returned all her calls. And I came to Canada to do that song for you, she continued. This was the thing she'd done for me on the 1992 Toys Fantasy Comedy soundtrack. But Grace, you did get a lot of money for that song, I pointed out. At the end of the rant, I said to her, I'm sorry about all of that, but I can't change it. Now, will you do the show or not? I'll do it, she purred, but it's going to cost you. I said, is it going to cost me from my spirit or from my wallet? Both, she said. We laughed our heads off at that, and by the time I left, we were buddies again.